regular meeting of the Stoughton Area School District Board of Education. Ms. Egan, could you please take the roll?
Mr. Boubon?
Here.
Mr. Coughlin?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
He is excused.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Right here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Ms. Sword?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Here.
Ms. Genter? Here.
President Dirks is here too.
President Dirks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in the agenda, we would entertain any public comment. If there are members of the public here who would like to address the board, please come up to the podium, speak into the microphone. Yes, sir, come on up. Please state your name for the record and give us your address as well.
I'm Sandy Quayle. My wife and I donated the 48 acres that is going to be discussed this evening. And I'd like to offer you some relief of the burden that this has caused. I know that many of you and other committees have put a lot of effort in this. But one of the first and most important things about ecology and owning a property of this sort is that no matter what you do, if you do nothing, things are still happening on that property. Birds are still nesting in the trees. Turtles are in the water and moving around, or all sorts of plants are growing. So no matter what you do, if you do nothing, you're still purifying the earth and you're making a contribution to our community. But you want to do something, and I understand that, and that is a part of the stewardship in taking care of this property. The first thing I'd like to give you some ideas as to what can be done. For example, if you go out into the middle where the prairie is and put up a 6 foot by 6 foot enclosure and make it about 6 feet or 8 feet high, and you wire that shut, you will then very shortly begin to know what the deer are doing to the land. You will see what they eat around there, and what they don't eat is inside the enclosure. And that will be an important learning thing for you to make other decisions regarding the deer population. Another thing is that you can ask birders, and there are many birders in Stoughton, to come and make an inventory of the birds on the property. If you make an inventory of the birds, then you file it away, and you do it monthly, and then the following year, and the following year. This will add up to information that is valid in determining the population of birds and other things that might crop up while you're there or while the birders are there. The third thing to do is to ask for the help of Madison Audubon Society. Their number is 255-2473, and they want to help. I talked to the director today, and he wants to help. And they know how to, let's say, put in a bus turnaround, how to put in paths within the property itself. And they will then do an inventory of the forbs and the grains and the grasses, all of these that have been put in with our input, my wife and myself, through the federal Fish and Wildlife. We put in multiple seeds for prairie there. The third thing you can do, or fourth thing, is consider selling, and I recommend that you sell, the 8 acres to the west that are contiguous to the houses along County Trunk End. Now, the idea is going price is about $5,000 an acre. And there are 8 acres there, that's $40,000. And you can, if you sell it to one of those multiple individuals there, Mr. Becker, for example, has horses, and this would be a great area for pasturing horses and that type of thing. So you initiate a sale and put that $40,000 in care of the reserve of the 48 acres. Now, my wife and I had an appraisal done of the property when we were giving it to you, to the citizens and to the children of Stoughton and Stoughton area. And the appraisal and the highest value was in it as a recreational area, in other words, for hunters. That was the highest value, not crops. And as I was saying at the beginning, the crop of this area is not every summer and with the harvest in the fall, but it goes on all year long with a better, cleaner, healthier community that we have. When I first purchased this land, I worked together with our Kitchen of Fish and Wildlife Service, and we immediately decided that I wanted to put as much water on the property as possible. And I would take out all the drain tiles that were in there. When I bought it, it had a corn on it. And so we took out the many drain tiles and we made scrapes. And these ponds cannot be returned, or tiles cannot be placed again on the property where the tiles have been taken out and ponds have been put in. So I am assured that this will remain wetland, even though for many people, wetlands kind of a swamp where nobody goes and all that. Remember that life is attracted to water. As we are searching for life on other planets, we have to first find water there. And so the intensity of life itself is where there is water. And so this is what we must complement our community by providing this reservoir. I grew up in southern Illinois. These little reservoirs, ponds, hold back the flow of all of this water that goes into the Yahara, the Rock, the Wisconsin, the Mississippi, and into the Gulf, and flood along the way. This holds that back. So you're contributing to other communities, especially on the riverbanks. This is your contribution, and you are contributing by just letting it be, where these things have already been set up for you. Be careful when you sell the property, that 8 acres, that you do not limit access for the children to get in there. That can be readily done. The 40 acres is a quarter section of property, 40 acres. And it's pretty well marked. So all of the animals that are there in a sense, they can't say thank you, but I'm sure that they do in some way. And this is something to be proud of. Not something to drag your feet on and say, oh my, it's a burden, it may cost us and all that. But be proud of it. Put your signage up. Say, you know, Stoughton Community Reserve or whatever you decide to name it. But put a name up there. Begin to provide access for the whole community. This is what we stand for. An embrace of the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Qualley. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening? All right, seeing nobody else coming up, I'll then call on Dr. Onsager for our Spotlight on Learning.
So this week and next week, we're going to be featuring our choir. This is a little video that we shot, promotional video, promoting our choir. And next week, or at the next meeting, the first meeting in November, our madrigal singers will be here to entertain us. And you know, those of you that have seen the madrigal singers, they are fantastic. So looking forward to that. So I thought we'd start with this video this week.
Music is definitely a calling for me because ever since I was a little girl, I've had this like need to perform and be around people and make people happy. And I found I had a talent for singing, and I know people enjoy being happy because they hear somebody singing and it makes them feel the emotions that the person who is singing is feeling. And that is why I perform, because I like to make people happy.
Singing is always something that has brought joy to my life. Singing and performing has taught me a lot about my personal limits, my personal goals, and how I can work to achieve what I want to achieve. Obviously, as a singer, there's a lot of competition in the field. There's a lot of things that drive me to better myself as a singer. And when I better myself as a singer, it also motivates me to better myself as a student.
I did go to Carnegie Hall last year with the choir. Performing at Carnegie Hall was probably the best experience that I've ever had. It really validated the pride I have in my own performing talents and being a part of such a great choir here at SHS.
Choir has been amazing. It's the reason I'm gonna go to college to be a music education. That's what my major wants to be, in choral, but kind of like Mr. Casey. So when I'm up on stage performing for band or choir, it's a sense of accomplishment. You're up there and you're like, all right, this is it. This is what I've been practicing for the past like month and a half, 2 months or so. And you get up there and you perform, and it's just like so. It's exhilarating, and it's just like you've done all this work just so that you can perform one time for a crowd of, say, 600, 700 people in that auditorium. And it's just like the most relieving and achieving feeling ever. And it's the reason I get up out of bed every morning, because it's just like you get to do something that you love every day and then show it to the world and show what you did and how hard you worked to do that.
So these are a series of videos that will show you throughout the year that we've made, that we push out during the open enrollment time to promote the district, to show the great things that we have, and to promote our students. Because you can't help look at how talented and how impressive our students are, and how impressive, our teachers are. You'll see Mr. Casey in the December board meeting, and an example of a fantastic teacher who gives his all and his heart and soul to the program and to the students, and it shows.
All right, thank you. Donna, legislative update.
Sorry, it looks like you guys got the wrong legislative update. It's the one from last week. I might have renamed the old one by mistake. Oh, it's something I keep, I work on for the 2 weeks from each meeting to each meeting, so I do not remember all of the things that were in there. So I guess I'll have to send the right one, and we'll just at least get the packet, so it's available for viewing. There were a few things that happened after I submitted the report on Friday. The Assembly Education Committee had a hearing, and they talked about Assembly Bill 496, which is something that the WSB actually helped draft, and it's about providing local discretion to begin suspension or expulsion if a student is caught with a firearm in the school. And right now, it's pretty hard and fast what happens if you do have the fire, if you're caught with a firearm. And there are just some districts that felt that they needed to be able to have their own control over what they do with that student, because sometimes kids may have a gun in school because they're taking hunter safety, or they've been hunting that morning, and so there just may be a lot of different circumstances, and so they wanted to make it a little bit more flexible. And WSB and the president of the WSB spoke in favor of that bill, and they voted to move that forward. They also advanced 3 other bills, Assembly Bill 159, which relates to policies on regulation of electronic smoking devices on property, 221, which is a pilot program for some districts that does not require a set number of hours for educating students, as there is for all of us. And then 398, which is relating to summer school and interim sessions. Some schools have found out that if they call something summer school and they have it right before school starts, it extends the school year. So it's legislation related to that. So I'll keep you up to date on those, and I apologize for sending the wrong report. I did have in there something about the resolution, but that's later on in the agenda, so we can discuss that when that comes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Ansager, your administrator's report.
Thanks, Scott. Couple things. First of all, just some general announcements and kind of dates. Starting Wednesday, November 22nd, Wednesday this week, there is no school for the holiday. So students are off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, and Monday of next week. Isabella's smiling over there. So Monday, November 27th, students are off, but staff are here for in-service time. And so the morning is spent in the buildings, building in service, topic by buildings, and then the afternoon is spent more district-wide. The buildings, all the buildings, including this one, will be closed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. It's a time that, especially in this building, the year-round staff takes a vacation day on Wednesday for the most part. So there'll be a few people here when we close the buildings because people are in and out. Next thing I had is early in December, we've been talking about ALICE training, and the board has heard some of the ALICE training and how we trained all the staff and how we're starting to talk about drills and things for students, and we had some parent informational sessions. Early part of December, in conjunction with the Stoughton Police Department, they will be talking to and training our 4K sites. We're inviting our preschool sites, and I also believe that we've been talking about extending an invitation out to the clergy as well, so that all the different entities, we're all using the same terminology. So as our students progress through preschool, through 4K into our system, we're all using the same terminology, we're all trained in the same way. So that'll be, we're looking early part of December. Again, and our SRO, our school resource officer, is taking the lead on that training. So that's coming up for those sites and invitations out to those as well. Attached to my administrative report are two things. First is the SASD e-news that was sent out last week to households. It's there for your information. Look at the information being sent out and kind of read about all the different areas. And the other thing is what I call Vision 2020. And this is just to kind of whet your appetite. And I know, and I'm purposely doing this so that you start thinking of questions and you start thinking of possibilities. Because sometime probably in February, I will be bringing a more detailed vision of what this is. But this started out as a what if, and it started off as, wouldn't it be cool if we could? Talking April 8th with our community, talking with some of you as board members, talking to our business community, talking to our city, listening to the conversations that this group and the city council had about growth and how can we work together. This started to take shape, and this is what I've been working on for the last probably a couple months, trying to get this more into from a what if to a possibility. And the more we work on this, the more it becomes from a, yeah, what if to this is possible. We could, if this is a direction we wanted to go, I believe, do a Vision 2020 and Innovation Center here in Stoughton. That could advance our STEAM opportunities for our students. STEAM, remember, is science, technology, engineering, arts, because that's important to be in there, and mathematics. It could be a district and community partnership and intersection, where most of the funding from this, I believe, could come from outside of the district. It could be a space that when we're not using it during the day, and in the evening could be a technology incubator for our community. It could be a tech catalyst for innovation workplace and establishment for established businesses. It could be a workforce development where we train and retain workers in the community and target also our underemployed community. It could be a startup workshop for mentoring and technical assistance. It is going from a what if to a possibility. And so this is just meant to whet your appetite. It's just meant to throw out the idea of what if we worked together with everybody and did an innovation center, technology innovation center, a STEAM center, a makerspace, an art, etc. And we could do it by 2020. So again, I purposely did this in my report so that this is an appetite whetter. Expect more of a discussion probably in February of kind of the possibilities, and the discussion, is this the route we want to take? Is this something that we want to pursue? And if we do, what are the pros, what are the cons? If not, if it's not the right time, okay, then there's other avenues that we can pursue with increasing opportunities in STEM and things like that. But this is a possibility. So I just wanted to throw that out to people just to get you thinking.
You'll,
Oh, so this is what came out at the ad hoc committee. The committee was
This is, I wouldn't say it directly came out of the ad hoc
Oh.
committee. This is taking conversations from lots of different places. From the April 8th where we had over 100 people, from conversations I had with all of you, from part of the ad hoc committee, from individual conversations with businesses, with the city, with your conversations with the city, and different entities, not only in the city, but in the region. And so this is kind of culminating multiple different conversations I've had with multiple different people and been privy to in multiple different times, and trying to take what everybody is saying and synthesizing it into a common idea and a common belief.
great.
Does this require a physical space,
Yes.
like the 1892 building?
I declined to comment, yes or no, because I didn't go into this. What this was not was going into this as saving an old building or a use for it. That could very well be a byproduct of it, if that's a conversation we want to have. But I went into this saying, based on the conversations I'm hearing, based on the information I'm gathering, how can we work together not only to set up our students for their future, but to help set up our community to be a hub and to attract, as we've talked in the ad hoc committee, our young families, to attract growth here, to attract people saying, I want to move to Stoughton because of not only what it offers my kids, but look what I can do, look what it offers me, and how do we partner with that, because we're a community resource as the school.
Other questions?
No, no question, but a shameless plug for the December 5th facilities meeting, where we're going to talk about the UW student class, engineering class is going to present its reuse analysis of the 1892 building. So, shameless plug.
All right, thank you. We look forward to more discussion on this. Next up is the consent agenda. Joey?
I move approval of the November 6th, 2017 regular board meeting minutes. I move approval of the November 2nd, December 5th, 2017 check register and November 15th, 2017 P-card transaction report as presented. We would like to say thank you to the following individuals and groups. They move approval of their donation to the district. $800 from Sandhill Working for Kids for School Climate Assembly. $350 from Stoughton Kiwanis Club for Healthy Snacks at Kigansa. $100 from John Michaelowicz in honor of Francis Petrovsky for River Bluff Student Classroom Supplies. $25 from Kent and Helen Carver for the Margaret Larson RN Scholarship in memory of David Christensen. $6.69 from the Kula Foundation Red Robin donation for River Bluff Student Classroom Supplies. Material and labor for Sandhill Outdoor Classroom valued at $1,500 from First Lutheran Church, First Lutheran Love Stoughton Area Ministry. Quality art supply for Stoughton High School Art Department, including acrylic paint, brushes, canvases, easels, stretchers, and a storage box, valued at $250 from the state of Richard Bordage. A mat board for K-12 Art Department, valued at $600 from the Quill and Brush Gallery, Vern Stroessel. A mat board storage cabinet for K-12 Art Department, valued at $200 from the Quill and Brush Gallery, Vern Stroessel. Telescope for optic microscope and slide for student science activities from Brett and Cheryl Schumacher. 4 4x4 side violin for student rental school instrument from Jenny Mastern. And related cash donation budget adjustment for $1,281.69. I move approval of the budget revision for the addition of the Title III grant in the amount of $27,500 and focus on energy rebate of $31,030, totaling $58,075, and approve budget transfers in the amount of $400 for building and department budgets. I move approval of the $2,568.28 Healthy Snack Grant awarded to Giganza from the Wisconsin Milk Marketing Board to encourage healthy eating. And I move approval of professional educator resignation of Morgan Kasich, pending the receipt of liquidated damages in the amount of $1,000.
The consent agenda has been moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
From Frank. Is there any discussion or questions regarding that? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved.
I'll abstain.
Oh, okay.
Abstain.
2 abstentions? Okay, thank you. That was Donna and Alice. Under discussion items, we do have several things. First is the 2016-17 audit update.
Good evening. I'm Brian Mechnick from Riley Penn Bend. I'm the partner on the engagement. Just like to say that we have the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We had no problems encountered during the audit. We had full cooperation with staff. Erica and her team do an excellent job preparing for the audit, and they do an excellent job throughout the whole year. So, some financial results. I'm just going to do some highlights as I have in the past. We have operating results. You had your general fund balance increased by $450,236. Your fund balance at the end of the year, you have $90,569 that was restricted for self-funded insurance, and then you had general fund unassigned fund balance of $10,699,000. The district's fund balance, you guys budget to have a surplus of anything over 20% of your operating budget for the next year. And based on the fund balance, you're at 26.98%. So you're in compliance with the fund balance policy. Some general fund budgetary information. Your expenditures, you budgeted $40,151,000. Actual expenditures were $39,637,000. So you spent 98.72% of your budgeted expenses. For revenues, you budgeted $40,212,000. Your actual revenue was at $40,258,000. So you received 100.11% of your budget revenue for the year. Then you have other financing uses this year. You budgeted $165,000. Actual was $170,000. So you percent of the budget that was used was 102.88%. Some debt activity. There was no new proceeds on general obligation debt this year. You had payments on long-term debt, principal payments of $1,280,000, and then payments on long-term debt interest of $367,000. And then in the footnotes, you have your pension, which we recorded on the governmental statements. I want to say it was 2 years ago already, or last year. And you have your deferred outflows related to the pension of $9,328,000. And then we have long-term liabilities. This is the net pension liability. It's at $1,161,000. And then you have deferred inflows related to the pension of $4,804,000. So, and this is all the money that's held with the Wisconsin retirement system. So your net position related to that is at $3,362,000. Then you have your OPEB, your actuarial accrued liability as of July 1st of 2015 was at $3,195,953. And then we have our annual required contributions of $479,000. So we have a net obligation unfunded of $2,595,673. There will be a new actuarial study that's required this year because the districts will be in this current school year that you're in. You're required to adopt GASB 75, so you'll be having a new actuarial study done to record this full actuarial benefit. So, we also do a uniform guidance audit, which is a federal single audit, and also a state single audit. We had no findings related to the programs that were tested in accordance with the requirements. We also issue a management letter which you received. If there are any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that would be noted during the audit, we would note this not just in the audit report, but in this letter. And I'm happy to report that there were none. Some districts receive significant deficiencies or material weaknesses for material journal entries that are made during the audit. If we feel that management is not able to take the responsibility of the financial statements, including all disclosures, and we feel that your team is able to do that. So we do not have any of those findings. So great job. Then we have other comments. We talk about your fund balance policy and that you guys are at the 27%. And then we also talk about the adoption of the GASB 75. So you'll need a new actuarial study for that, which you're aware of. And then also that in accordance with the uniform guidance that came out 2 years ago, you're required to have a procurement policy. And we note all the additional requirements that are required to be adopted for that. I know that DPI has put out guidelines related to that, so you've been working on making sure you're in compliance with that. But we just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Any questions for me regarding the audit? Or the process or anything?
Steve? So you made a note about the fund balance being greater than 20%, and there were roughly 27%.
Correct.
I don't know if you are allowed or if it's part of your service to comment. Is that good, bad?
That is great.
Okay.
What it does is it helps you reduce short-term borrowing. You'll see that you don't have short-term borrowing. Like a lot of districts will borrow money at this end of the school year to pay the teachers, and then when they get aid or the tax payments in the fall, they'll use that to pay that down. So this makes it possible for you not to have to borrow to do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next up, discussion regarding the 48 acres property.
Good evening. I have prepared for you, I think it was in your board packet, a summary of the work that we used to be called the 48 Acre Committee, and now we are Outdoor Education. I would say that one of the really awesome things that's come from our whole experience with 48 Acres is a renewed interest and invigoration in getting kids outdoors. We had a DNR trainer come in last summer and do some outdoor ed and wildlife experiences with us, so introduced to probably 40 elementary teachers. Those kind of opportunities, they receive resources. We've named local places that you can get to pretty quickly that are developed, have facilities for our students, and are pursuing a field trip. Actually, I think you'll see it later, a field trip study, what do we call it? A walking field trip, so that kids can have the opportunity to routinely be part of their school campus and within blocks of school without the other form that asks for everything from international study to, gathering buses and are we missing lunch and everything. So we're hoping to expedite that. So that's a resurgence of energies, I think, toward getting kids outdoors. Otherwise, I've tried to summarize here for you the work that we've done, the people that we've worked with, UW Stevens Point, with our forester from DNR, with the surveyor who did do official surveys, and in all of that work, we've come to the conclusion that we have about 5 options, I think, 5 options now. Really only 4 because number 4 isn't an option anymore. So I don't know if you'd like to ask questions or have me walk through this with you.
I guess I'll just start out and see if people do have questions. Donna?
Has this has this gone through facilities committee? Because it seems like this would be a facilities issue.
It has not. It certainly can. It's always come right here to you, so all of the steps that we've taken, I haven't taken it through facilities, but if that's a path on the way, I can do that.
Other questions?
Well, I do have a
Yeah, go
comment.
ahead.
I was trying to send it. Just by chance, I think it was the last week. My husband has been. He had worked for the Arboretum for many years, and then now he does tours of the Arboretum as a naturalist. And he came with this magazine, and it was about the 20 years of. I think this magazine is called Friends of the Lakeshore Natural Preserve in Madison. And it's been 20 years since they started this outdoor classroom in campus. And it's been, I think they started, I don't know how many wetlands or things they have there. They have prairie for sure. And I was just thinking that was, I'm going to send the article to everyone because it was very inspiring. I sent it to George, to the facility committee, so to be discussed. I think it is a great opportunity. Still, I know that there's a lot of different things that probably are on the way to prepare as an outdoor classroom, but I think it should be our vision to do that. And it's going to be great. And like you said, even doing nothing, it's still going to be doing something.
And that's an option.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Is there, and I apologize if we've covered this, is there a specific curriculum being designed around this, or is it just a resource for different schools to use that is
For this piece of property, there is not.
Outdoor education.
Right. The outdoor education is more making sure that we use outdoors as part of our learning opportunity. So there isn't a unique curriculum for being outdoors, but to embed that and those opportunities into the work that we're doing.
And this would expand our
The 48 acres presents some hurdles for us. Accessing it, there are no facilities there unless we could bring facilities in, we could bring a porta potty in. But right now there are no facilities. The accessing it is on an unpaved road right now. So for a bus to get there, to get into the property is a hurdle for us. Some of there's water on the property, so that is an awareness we have to have. That's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But when we take children there, so we have a number of hurdles on the property. So I can honestly say we have not taken a group of children, a class of children, to that property since we received it. I do believe there have been a handful of adults a couple different times who have toured it at different seasons, summer, winter, and probably fall, I think. I don't think we've done all 4 seasons yet, but so we're kind of aware of what is there. But I guess to get right back to your question, there is not a curriculum designed for this piece of property.
Other questions?
Do we have a sense of what the costs have been to date for maintaining this property?
I can calculate that for you, yes.
And then is there a timeline that we're looking at that is there something that's pressing that makes this issue something that we need to decide upon?
No, we committed to a 5-year study team, and I think the work that the educators have done has pretty much come to a close, that the recommendations that they've made here and are looking to pursue other venues for that outdoor work. There was at some point, I don't remember what year, concern about weed, seed dispersal and weeds. That becomes an expense for us to manage that with limited use for our students. It is not limited for the environment, that would be fine, but with limited use and an expense for us. So we would just have to decide to do nothing and deal with the weed dispersal or to march through these other options. There isn't any really timeline that's pressing at all. We can go with option number 1, that is keep the land, let it lie fallow, wait until some universal thing happens, changes it.
You.
I would look into partnering with any other institution that can help with kind of not only preserve them, but with those issues on that.
Excuse me. We work closely with the DNR, who helped us with soil samples and mapping out vegetation and growth. Because it is designated as a wetland, for us to do anything to the property requires a permit that will cost us $800 to request to do something. There's no guarantee that we can do it, but the cost would remain. We partnered with UW-Stevens Point in naming it as the Stoughton School Forest, with limited forest on it, but we can't develop that because it's designated as wetland and without permitting. I mean, permission to do that.
What about what Mr. Said about the Audubon Society?
I have not called the Audubon Society. I certainly can. These were governmental agencies that were giving us parameters and restrictions.
Oh, okay. And what about UW Arboretum?
Pardon me?
The Arboretum. The UW Arboretum.
Yeah, Amy Hermanson was in touch with them. We also talked to DNR about partnering with the use of the land and the development of the land, but they don't do that anymore because of fiscal limitations for them.
Because I know that they have plans too, that they use like path, like our boards where people walk over to not disturb anything. So,
And I mean, pursuing permission to do that is still an option. The committee is not seeing it as the most viable venue for outdoor education experiences. Because there is no bus access right now. We would have to pay to have that paved and there isn't a bathroom, a porta potty there. We could pay to have that. That's probably not something that the neighbors would like in their backyard. But you can't take a bus full of kids out to out there and then say, yeah. So there's.
Can I have that?
Yeah, sure.
Last question. And the other option that Mr. Ford was saying was about selling the 8 acres that are around neighbors. And so if that happens, can the money be used to, after having the permit and all that, fill in what we need to have access to it? I mean, I don't know.
That's a decision you would probably have to make.
But I mean, is it a possibility that
It's a
happens?
possibility to, there's 26 feet of road, it's $300 a foot to pave it. And then the facilities are still, certainly not plumbing out there, so we'd have to think of that. We could use resources to pay for buses to help children, but even with that, there are other venues, and I've listed them, several of them here, that really offer a more diverse environment for the kids to experience. Woods, lakes, streams, prairies that are all in an area that has facility and a developed place for the bus to travel. So, yeah, we can parse out the 48 acres and split it up, if that's the recommendation.
Frank, you had your hand up before.
Is there somewhere you could direct us to read where we could learn a little bit more about outdoor education principles?
Yes. Do lots of things for that.
Just maybe the one or two best. You send me two, I'll read them. If you send 30, I'll kind of.
Good. Okay. I certainly can send you to UW Stevens Point, which is sort of the central location and host of all outdoor education ideas in the state. Everything goes back to Stevens Point. So we worked with them, and we're designated as school forest, even though our stand of trees are very small. But that is a place to start, and I can certainly connect you with even the work that we've done over time, which might be interesting to you as well.
I would be grateful for that. Thank you.
Allison, do you have anything?
Just one thing I was looking at, just on kind of a summary in a study talking about the other opportunities that are available. One thing I would say about Badfish Creek, and really even Division Street Park, there still is no bathroom. In Badfish, I think any of the parking areas, it would be a challenge to turn a bus around in there.
Badfish Creek has a area that they use for high school. High school students have gone there. We haven't taken elementary kids there, and Division Park is, of course, got close access to our middle school.
Right, so there is that.
Right, so those wouldn't be places that you would choose to take elementary kids. It's just so close to the middle school that it makes for a nice routine water testing opportunity.
For those of us who aren't familiar with it, can you describe the outdoor education team that's listed here?
Yes. Made up of, at our largest, educators from all 5 buildings, math teachers, science teachers, environmental ed teachers, every level of elementary, a social worker. When we first launched this, we anticipated it as being an opportunity to develop the property. We talked about ropes courses, they talked about just a long list, our first generated list. I'll try and provide that in the links as well. None of which we can pursue. And so then our committee dwindled quickly, because when they realized that their personal passions, Eagle Scouts and ropes courses and trust building and all of those things weren't an option. We're down to a fairly small team, 3 really core teachers that are holding it together. Carrie Reiser, a 4th grade teacher at Fox, Melissa Ma, the science teacher at River Bluff, and Amy Hermanson, to some degree in environmental ed at the high school.
And
Oh, I should say, and Chris Keenan, who's a TAG coordinator at elementary. She's
Okay.
been really involved.
Okay. And so it looks like, or you mentioned that it went from the 48-acre study team to the outdoor education team, and then you just mentioned that it's dropped down to 3 core teachers.
These are the people that are like core moving it. There are many that are interested in, one of the barriers for elementary teachers is they have a limited, I believe they have a limited number of field trips they can take, and they have a routine field trip that belongs to their grade level, and they do that. And so to have bus transportation would be an additional cost. So by looking at outdoor ed as being outdoors and learning in this space instead of it needing to require bus transportation someplace else, is starting to interest a lot of elementary people.
Okay. And so the outdoor education team, you expect to be something that exists regardless of what happens to this
Yes.
property?
Absolutely. Good question.
Okay. And then the materials that Frank requested, is that, I wasn't exactly sure the extent of Frank's request, but will that include examples of current outdoor education efforts that we have throughout the district, or could I separately request that we get more information on that just to see what we're doing already?
More of a survey of how staff are using the
Sure.
outdoors right now? Sure.
I guess I'm also curious, so with this team having existed and having fluctuated in its membership, I assume that most of the educators throughout the district are aware that we're looking at the possibility of expanding our outdoor education?
I would say all of elementary is, as they were invited and many participated in our experience this summer.
Okay.
The middle school science teachers have been pretty avid users of both their kind of backyard space, forest area, and access to the river. High school has always had their small arboretum, and their environmental science is a whole course that they teach. So I would say that's where we're going. We're really trying to nurture it at elementary so they don't have to wait till high school to take an environmental ed class.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, did you have a question?
Well, John asked my question, so thanks for asking that question. I appreciate it. But I was curious if Mr. Vaughn is involved in the outdoor education team, and I understand that he was working on a kind of a broader curriculum that dealt more with natural resources for what was typically kind of an FFA program.
Project Ag.
I'm sorry?
Agriculture and natural resources, is the program. He has not been involved thus far.
Have there been, you referenced concerns from neighbors or folks that live near here? Has there been any engagement with them specifically to get their thoughts, ideas as to what they would like to see?
They had shared some of their ideas with us early on.
And what was the general you hear?
There was mostly concern of who would access the land and whether high school youth would take advantage of having this quiet, hidden piece of land. Very fair concern. There was talk once of purchasing the land or part of the land. We were not taking, the outdoor ed team was trying to look at it in a use purpose for it. So we really haven't pursued, these were ideas that were generated. We have not pursued any one of them.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Is there any way, like, I know every year we go and visit every school. Wouldn't it be a possibility that we go and visit the land and Also, I think I kind of pass by all the time.
Yeah.
Because I live right there.
Good.
But I haven't really seen it, and sometimes it helps when you're explaining, you know, just a little bit fast enough to turn around and all that. We see it probably will give us.
I have some photo things that you might be interested in looking at that I can pass around, but we can go out there.
Oh,
I don't think we could hold a meeting there, but.
Not without a bathroom.
Yeah.
There's no bathroom. Which is
At least Joe's out then.
I guess one thing that I would be interested in before we start picking options is, well, actually, and you do list it as an option, number 3, is a feasibility study regarding the costs of putting in a driveway, making it bus accessible, et cetera, because right now we don't really know. And I've been out on the property. I think I was in the first group that went out and walked it late winter, early spring. There was no snow, but there was no green either. And it's a beautiful wetland. The forest, yeah, there really isn't much. There, as I recall, it's, well, that's one of the things I'd like to have us explore is what actual costs to the district would be involved. And I also think that we should explore the possibility of partnerships with other organizations. Mr. Qualley mentioned the Audubon Society. Stoughton Conservation Club is another possibility. There are a number of organizations that, even if they wouldn't want to actually use the property, do have budget for youth outdoor education. So if cost is an issue for us, I think that that's a possibility that we should at least look at. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I think that's something that I'd like for the board to have before we make any decisions on what to do or not do with the property. Yeah.
It's my understanding that facilities committee is going to embark on some kind of a 10-year plan or some audit. Is that right?
Facilities audit, yeah.
A facilities audit. So I guess I would just encourage that this kind of stuff kind of go through the facilities, and then it doesn't seem like, I mean, you say there's no timeline, there's nothing pressing, nothing urgent, so, you know, we could leave it as is, it sounds like for a while, and maintain our stewardship of the land and for the animals and the wildlife that's there. I have always been sensitive to our neighbors, and I want to make sure that we aren't doing anything that is distressing to them, or not, you know, us not doing something that in turn is an issue. But I would just encourage that it goes through facilities first, and we, you know, move from there. And we've had this presentation a few times now, so I know that it seems like we have some time. And it is, I guess, you know, from a policy standpoint, I'm kind of sensitive to the fact, even if we did have a drive, we have to consider accessibility in terms of children with disabilities and special needs, because that could really be an issue. But we do really have a lot of things right around us that are accessible, very accessible, don't cost us anything, and are familiar to our kids, that I think we should definitely, you know, I'm glad that we're taking advantage of that, and maybe we need to pursue that even more.
Yeah, I guess I would suggest that whichever firm we do hire for a facilities audit, if this is something that they can do, I would hope that we could get them to do it. Otherwise, yeah, I think we have to find somebody else to work up the costs and so forth. But I would agree that at least that aspect of how to dispose of this property really ought to go through facilities. Okay, other questions for Judy? Yeah.
And Judy, maybe you're going to share this for John and Frank's request about some of the ideas for outdoor education. That's going to be part of what you're going to share?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, Judy.
You bet.
We have several policies up for discussion, I guess. Donna, do you want to walk us through those?
Sure. So the first one up is policy 707, high school graduation. And for some of you who were on the board not too long ago, this may seem familiar because we approved a change not too long ago. It looks on August 28th. I'm just passing these.
Yep.
And what happened is that once we made the change, someone in the high school counseling office was reviewing it and said, this is not actually our current practice, and made some comments about changing something. So it's not they're not big changes, but we felt it was important enough to bring to the board. The one change that would be a new thing is changing Stoughton High School principal in section D, transfer students, to Stoughton High School principal or their designee. The reason why this change is requested is because the counselors have been making this decision that's referenced here in transfer students, so it reflects current practice. The second change is that we did make some changes about the credits because those were changes in statute. We just weren't thorough and went all the way through to another section, so we have to reflect the correct numbers. Change 16.5 to 17 and 20 to 20.5. So it's really kind of a small change, but it still warrants coming to the board. Any questions? Great. We'll bring that back then at the next meeting for formal approval. What's next on the agenda here?
7:14.
7:14. Okay, 7:14. Oh, I said, I don't have to print that one. I have that in my bag, but I somehow don't have it in my bag. Sorry, my computer isn't working here. This was a policy that we've actually, the committee looked at quite a while ago, and it's just now we had a chance to bring it forward. This is a policy that we are, one of the things that we changed the name for, from student privacy, because actually the content of the policy really was really not about student privacy. We have many other policies that reference student privacy and the data around that. It was really talking more about the educational rights of parents and guardians. So we are proposing to rename this policy, number 1. And we did a lot of cleanup on the policy, kind of what we've been doing with some of these policies by moving a large portion to guidelines because they're kind of rules and procedural driven, and just sort of came up with more of a clean policy that accurately reflects the purpose. So did anyone have a chance to review some of the changes? Any questions on that?
So the part that is
underlined?
Yes, thank you. It went just to, it was taken from here and put in the, oh my God.
Yeah, there's a glitch right now with board docs that it doesn't show in color, so the changes are underlined. And then strikeout is what was taken out. And it was struck out most likely because it moved to guidelines. And I believe the guidelines are also included here, but we aren't. I guess the guidelines are not included. So before we would approve this, I would just ask that we review the guidelines, but we aren't voting on the guidelines. Any other questions on that? Okay. So then the final policy 8.4, well, one more policy 8.14. As I think I've explained before, we have a regular policy rotation. It's a really wonderful thing to be in a position where we actually are reviewing policies because they've just come up for review, not because we're under the gun. And this is one of those policies. So after reviewing it, actually no changes are being recommended at all. But we will highlight in the policy that it was reviewed on this date so that we have some record. But there were some significant changes that were made to guidelines. And those have been attached for your reference. But really there's nothing to vote. There's not going to be anything to vote on here. This is more kind of like an FYI. The guidelines were not really current with practice. Is that right, Kelly and Judy? They're nodding their heads. So we just thought it was good to bring it forward. And then the last item that I've got is the 807 walking field trip form. So this is again, 807 is a policy that we're not really actually recommending any changes, but they did feel that the need to have this new form because they have these, it's kind of like a blanket form, so that they've got they don't have to keep asking over and over again for permission to leave the building and go and do some sort of a walking field trip. Some of the examples I shared here were, there's a science class at River Bluff that goes down regularly to the Hero last year taking water samples. If they had this blanket form, then that actually triggers all of the things that need to happen. If you've got kids with allergies or kids that need special medical attention, that way everyone knows what needs to be done and how they need to be prepared, and they just do this once and they're ready to go every time they leave. So this is more, again, another FYI for you, just to know that we are adding another exhibit to this policy, which has a lot of exhibits, actually. There's lots of forms to fill out for permission.
Questions on any of that? All right, thank you, Donna. We have a couple discussion action items, the first of which is the proposed resolution in support of the Wisconsin Voucher Taxpayer Transparency Bill. And Donna, I'll let you talk about that one as well, since that's your bailiwick.
So there is, coincidentally, Eau Claire, who is represented by Dana Watts, who authored this Assembly Bill 267, actually Senate Bill 183. Is he Assembly or Senate? I can't remember. But Eau Claire passed a resolution supporting this legislation, and it's called the Voucher Taxpayer Transparency Bill, because there really are no, our tax bills do not show how much money the school aides are going to voucher program. And so it's actually a bill that has been circulating. It hasn't gotten a lot of support. And so there's a push by groups around the state to kind of use this resolution, passing a resolution like this, as a PR type campaign to just kind of bring it back up so that people can take a look at it and be supportive. We don't actually have any voucher students in our school district this year. Last year we had 2. So I had to, everyone's been kind of modeling their resolution on Eau Claire's, which has a significant amount of dollars that they lose to voucher students, as do other districts. Maybe you've seen, I think the WEAC actually put something out that listed all the districts and what they lose each year. We're not on there because we lose 0. So what I did is I just tried to modify this resolution to be more generalized, because at some point it could affect us. It's kind of lengthy, but it says all that it needs to say. And so I actually am encouraging us to pass this resolution, and I know we normally have a 2-step, but I think we kind of actually had the first step already, because I've included it on previous legislative reports, so you could take a look at it. The resolution that you look at in front of you is virtually the same thing, except I've updated all of the figures to be current, because that policy was, that resolution was passed in June and the numbers were old.
So are you formally moving that the board adopt this resolution?
I am formally moving that the board adopt this resolution.
Is there a second? Second from Steve. Any discussion or questions? Steve, go ahead.
Donna, I appreciate you bringing this forward in the last meeting and the legislative update and crafting this, and I just want to say thank you. I think it's relevant that we address this. Regardless of not having voucher students, we're still, public schools are still losing money.
Absolutely.
So
Mhm.
I think it's relevant, so thank you.
I mean, the only reason I say that is that it is a little bit harder to get people fired up about it in our community because they just don't understand it. But that doesn't mean that at some point it will affect us, and it did affect us, last year in a small way. And it's interesting because the LFB, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, just actually released their general aid numbers today. And in that, they talk about our general aid payment amounts, and they list, things like per pupil membership and all the different values per member, the cost, the shared cost, general equalized aid. One thing that they don't show, though, is the reductions related to the voucher program, the statewide program, and the Racine program. And it's actually by statute. Like they're not, the state statute says they do not show that, which is not very transparent, obviously. So I think that would just is another reason why it's a good thing to pass. And maybe I can work with Derek, we can try to get this out on the Wheeler report, or definitely get on the WASB website and boards taking action, and maybe we'll get some others to do. But there are lots of boards at the legislative conference last week or the week before that I went to. One thing that one district brought up the fact that DPI spends an incredible amount of time and money on figuring out these aids, like, to a lot of money. And I mean, they don't want to be doing it. It's really become cumbersome. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but I mean, it is something that we need to make everybody more aware of.
Other questions or comments? So there's been a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. I would propose a roll call vote.
Mr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Coughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Sword?
Aye.
Ms. Tarpinian?
Aye.
Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Buban?
Aye.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Aye.
President Dirks?
Yes.
So we have the resolution printed out in hopes that you would pass it, and then could you just stick around after the meeting and we'll all sign it?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, and the final discussion action item for this evening is a staffing request at River Bluff. Tim, do you want to?
Sure. As you know, we believe in full inclusion. We believe that students learn best in the classroom with their peers. But there's a continuum of services. There are times where some of our students, for social, emotional, behavior, or academic, or social skills, need a little bit more interaction and need to help build their capacity. So you think of a continuum as full inclusion in the classroom all the time, to, unfortunately, there are times where we have students who, because of certain circumstances, we need to provide services outside the school system, and maybe they're going to a different setting. When that happens, that is very costly for the district, sometimes $100,000 a year for a student to come to some of those additional services or to a private school outside. So there's a continuum of services, and so you don't want to go from 0 to 60. You want to try everything before you can. Well, in looking at our continuum of services, especially at River Bluff, we've identified a need, and we've identified a hole in that continuum of services. So it is the request that we add a learning strategist, a special education professional at River Bluff to help support and help meet the needs of these students, again, in their emotional regulation, their social skills, their self-awareness, academic interventions, and it is the hope that then we build their capacity so they're back into more and more of the regular classroom. And so we've identified the need, and that this staff person would help fill that gap.
So is there a motion for the board to approve the hiring of a learning strategist at River Bluff for the 17-18 school year?
So moved.
Okay, I'll take Donna as moving it and Tim as a second. Any discussion or questions about that?
We don't have any learning strategies right now, or
We do.
We do, okay.
This would be an additional one.
Okay. Yeah, I think it.
Yeah, Allison.
And this this would just be for this year, it would be a temporary position? Or am I reading that right, or?
It's
It's permanent, that's not, I'm just,
Oh,
the way
okay.
it's worded, I
Okay.
was trying to figure out if it was just for this year.
Other questions or comments, Donna?
I'm not opposed to providing that support. I just would caution that we've been adding staff. We are definitely above our FTE. I mean, we have them now for several years, and at some point that we may not be able to do that. And so just not opposed to it. I just want to make sure we are all aware that we are going over.
All right, there's been a motion and a second for hiring a learning strategist at River Bluff beginning in the 17-18 school year. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and that's approved then.
Would you mark me as an abstention, please?
Oh, sure. Board members, we do have reason now to convene in executive session in accordance with section 19.85 sub 1 sub C sub F to consider criticisms of the performance of the district administrator. I would entertain a motion to move into closed session for that purpose.
So moved.
From Frank, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, from Steve. Any discussion? Then I'd ask for a roll call vote on that motion, please.
Mr. Coughlin?
Yes?
Mr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Ms. Tarkinian?
Aye.
Ms. Sword?
Aye.
Mr. Bouvon?
Yes?
Ms. Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
President Hughes?
Yes. All right, board members, it's almost 8:25. Please convene upstairs at 8:30.
We're not coming back down here.
No, the only thing we'll do after that is move back into closed session, which we can do upstairs. I'm sorry, did I say that?
Yeah, we all do that.
You kind of like reset it, like completely turn it off. Not even doing this. You gotta leave the tree to the same route. Or also just fasting on the time.
No.
Yeah. Can you say it? Can you turn off? Ask her to turn off.
She won't do it. She won't do it. She gives me instructions.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to think what.
Yeah. We actually do have that coming.